and welcome to another quick Circle Stories video. In this one I wanted to talk about the idea of fairy music and why some people are particularly wary of it, and why musicians themselves are often protective of it, even in contemporary Ireland today. So why is that? Well, there are certain musicians who were said to have been given the gift of their musicianship by the fairies. Now, sometimes it would be an actual gift where they could play anything at all. Other times it would just be the tunes that the fairies had given them, but these were so hypnotic and so powerful that a person could make a living from playing just those tunes. So how does that come about? Well, there are certain stories that musicians who weren't particularly good would sleep out at a sacred site, for example, so a stone circle or a rath or a mound on auspicious nights like an equinox or a solstice. And by doing so, they were making a bargain with the fairies, and the fairies would in turn give these musicians the gift of, like I said, maybe hypnotic melodies, or maybe the gift of musicianship itself. So because of this, though, there are stories that you can read in the folklore archives where the fairies tell these musicians they have to be very protective of these tunes. They can't write them down, they can play them, but they can't pass them on in any other way. In fact, there's a particular story from Kerry where the fairy is quite straight up about it and says this is music of the Otherworld, and if anyone plays it or imitates it who we haven't given it to ourselves, then woe betide, what's going to happen to them? They're going to be in big trouble. So let's move on a little bit then. Although the music is magical and beautiful and has otherworldly qualities, there's often a danger to hearing fairy music. I suppose one of the more basic reasons is because it would often signal the parade of fairies from mound to mound. So hearing that music meant that the fairies were nearby, and you only had a short window to escape. Oftentimes people would hear bells as a fairy mist descended, for example. Other times, though, the songs, for example, with women who were spinning wool late at night, they would often fall into a particularly hypnagogic state, and in those instances the songs that they were singing would draw the fairies out of the other world, as well as having the power to send someone to another world. So it's interesting. It's like it's a way, it's something that the melody becomes something that can cross dimensions. Now, it's not always a melody. In indigenous cultures it can be the sound of bees, and that's interesting when we think about Fatima, for example, because when the lady or the cloud descended, the children initially were saying we can hear voices, but it comes through the sound of bees. So is it a case that the fairy melodies and songs are opening some kind of secret path to the other world? Or could it be a case that the melodies are manipulating our consciousness? Now, it's interesting. Some people say that the full scale of fairy melody can't be perceived by us consciously. It's something that acts on a deeper level on our subconscious, as well as aspects of, I suppose, a higher consciousness or dimensional effect, which allows us to be transported to this other world, because that's what happens sometimes when people hear these melodies. They're transported to the fairy otherworld, and as I said, sometimes the melodies act in a way that the fairies are allowed to move from their world to ours. Now that's interesting when you compare it to songs called Icaros from South America, which are sung by a shaman, and the melodies are given to the shaman by the spirits or by the ancestors in order to heal or to again, I suppose you could say, bring a gift to someone who's looking to repair themselves, like soul retrieval. And also in ancient Greece, of course, you had the Goetes, who were people who used to sing melodies which could escort the soul to the next life. So it's the same thing again. It's like there are certain melodies acting on aspects of ourselves, our spirits, if you like, and which helps to transport us to the other world. Whether or not the fairy other world is the same as the afterlife other world is a huge question, and something that we could talk about for a very long time. But it's interesting to finish up. There's an old Irish lullaby called Where the Hawthorn Quivers, and in it a woman has been kidnapped by the fairies, and she's in the other world, and she has to take care of a fairy changeling who's there, as well as a human baby. And she can see the human world from the fairy world, but she can't get her instructions across to ask for help except through a song or through a melody of the lullaby that she sings. So in this lullaby itself, we're hearing her story, and she's trying to attract attention so that someone can rescue her from the fairy other world. So that's interesting, when you think about the idea that the fairy other world is all around us, but we just can't perceive it. Suppose in contemporary times, John Keel has written a lot about that, but it echoes some of the teachings of ancient Egypt, for example, the duat, which is also like a parallel world, to put it simplistically. But anyway, that's just a quick summation of the fairy music here in Ireland, and why some people are afraid of it, some people treat it with great respect. Okay, so I'll see you next time for another quick Circle Stories video.